Yeah, in switches we have some technology like ASIC, application specified integrated circuit. So this ASIC application is responsible for high speed data traffic forwarding in switch, ASIC. So in switch there are two types of switches. So we'll be discussing later what are the two types of switches. So then switches are going to operate in full duplex. In case of hubs, they're operating in half duplex. Full duplex means two-way communication which is taking place simultaneously. So that is full duplex. And switches, it provide intelligent forwarding frames. So anyone can tell what is frames? We discussed yesterday, right? What is frames? I
Frame is
explained. Yeah,
frame is a layer 2 header with packets.
layer one header.
Layer 2 header plus packets. That is
Yeah,
full
layer
frame.
2 header plus packets. That will be those both information will contain as frames. Okay, so that is nothing but frames. We discussed yesterday about encapsulation and decapsulation process. You can just open that PDF and you can go through this. What is frames? What is packets? What is segments? You can see over there. And this switches are intelligent forwarding of frames. Then it can take decision based on headers and forward the traffic. It is going to take based on these headers and it's going to forward the traffic. So I told two types of switches. Here, these are the two types of switches. So the two types of switches are non-manageable switches and manageable switches. What is non-manageable switches? So these switches are not configurable. So these switches we cannot configure in real time, and there will be no console ports in these switches, and it will give you functionality of a switch, but you cannot configure additional technologies on it, and this is very of less price. So what is this? Switches are not configurable. We cannot configure using any CLI commands, and there will be no kind of any kind of console ports, and it will going to give you, it is not going to give you any kind of additional technologies. These switches, example, these switches are used for home. We use the switches whatever we are using in home for home purpose, and this like switches what we are using for non-manageable means is we cannot configure. As I told, it is a low price switch we can buy from shop for our personal uses like connecting devices in home. So you can take example like, I'll just switches we buy switches we buy from shop for our personal, okay, personal uses. You had class Terraform, sorry, DevOps. No, not to Arun's class. You didn't go. What he did today? What he did? Same thing he continued. He didn't start any new today. Okay. Okay. New images. Okay. Fine. Okay. Okay. Switches we buy from shop for our personal uses, like connecting connecting devices in home. So these are less price also. But when it comes to manageable switches, these are configurable switches. We are using all the CLI commands. Like further, you'll be studying all the commands. So we'll be using those commands to configure, and it will give you the functionality of a switch. It is going to give you a proper functionality of a switch, and you can configure other additional technologies also on this. And there will be console port. In case of manageable switches, we have a console port, but in case of Non-manageable, we don't have console port. So this is high price, and I'll give the example. Ma uh, yeah, we can configure it using commands, as I told, CLI commands. And these are actually two types. In manageable switches, there is a two types. What are these two types? Layer 2 switch and layer 3 switch. So layer 2, this L2 means layer 2, L3 means layer 3 switch. So what is this layer 2 switch? So it will only have layer 2 technologies. Which is layer 2? OSI layer we studied, right? Which is layer 2?
Data link layer.
Yeah, data link layer. So data link layer, example, we studied switch, right? So here in layer 2 switches, it will only have layer 2 technologies. Layer 2 technologies means it can only act as a switch. This layer 2 switches have only that functionality of acting as a switch. That's it. But now technology is advanced. We are having layer 3 switches. So it will have layer 2 and layer 3 functionality. It will act as both switch and router. That is nothing but layer 3 switches. So it is a switch and also a router, as I told. And by default, routing will be disabled in these switches. It will be acting as only a switch, but if there is any requirement, we can enable the routing in layer 3 switches. But you can also enable if it is required only, if it is disabled. And this is also known as multi-layer switches. If it is acting as both router and switch, this is known as multi-layer switches.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah,
These L2 and L3 switches comes under manageable switches, right?
exactly, it is going to come under manageable switches. I'll just mention you manageable switches. So manageable switches, these are actually two types. That is L2 and L3. So any doubt with these things? Whatever we discussed for hubs and switches. So tomorrow I will continue with routers. I'll tell routers and then we'll start submitting all those things. First to understand the basic things. How OSI layer works and which layer is OSI layer. What are the examples? See now routers I'm telling, nobody is answering which layer. So you guys just be thorough with all the things. So tomorrow we'll start routers and with some other new topic. Okay, any doubt for today's class? If you guys have no